The Athenians were the first of the Greeks to put aside their arms and adopt a more relaxed and comfortable lifestyle. This taste for indulgence meant that only recently did the older men among the well-off give up wearing tunics of linen and pinning their hair back in a knot fastened with golden cicada brooches. Older generation of Ionians had, through their kinship with the Athenians, adopted the same style of dress, and it persisted a long time among them. The Spartans, on the other hand, were the first to adopt a simpler form of dress in the modern fashion, and in other respects too, the better off among them made every effort to share the lifestyle of the ordinary people. They, in other words, the Spartans, were also the first to strip naked for exercise in public and anoint themselves with oil afterwards. The old way, including at the Olympic Games, was for athletes to compete wearing loincloths to cover their genitals, and this practice only ceased a few years ago. There are still those among the barbarians, even now, particularly those from Asia, who wear loincloths for their boxing and wrestling contests. Indeed, one might point to many other respects in which the customs of Greece long ago resembled those of the barbarians today. Okay, so that's the entirety of paragraph 6, regardless of whatever translation you're working from. So we're back up to speed with Thucydides' paragraphing. We've completed the entirety of paragraph 6. And that paragraph begins with Thucydides saying that it was the Athenians who were the first to adopt a more comfortable and relaxed lifestyle. And the primary characteristic of this more comfortable lifestyle is that they didn't have to carry their weapons around with them. And now remember where things ended in the previous paragraph, namely that the reason people had to carry their weapons around with them in their everyday life was because in the earliest times of Greece, the defining characteristics of the people is that they were weak. They were lacking all of those things that techne, art, craftsmanship, which is to say the power of mind, provides for them. All of that was absent. They lacked walls, they lacked large numbers of people, they lacked greatness. And in the absence of greatness, it's simply every man for himself. And so every man has to carry their own weapons around with them to guard against everybody. And so here again, Thucydides is telling us Athens was the first. That's where Greekness first shows itself. And in particular, the fruits of Greekness are a more relaxed and comfortable lifestyle. And we can't lose sight of the fact that the more comfortable and relaxed lifestyle is in opposition to the earlier lifestyle of barbarism. And when Thucydides tells us that Greekness first shows itself with Athens, in other words, that the Athenians were the first Greeks, what he's telling us in this passage in particular is that the greatness of the Greeks in their power of mind is far superior in strength to merely the power of might makes right with the barbarians. And what that means here is that the Athenians are the first to show how confident they are in the power of their mind through techne to defend them against the might makes right of the barbarians, that they don't even have to carry their own individual weapons around with them because their strength, their greatness, resides defensively and collectively in their numbers, their walls, their wealth, and as we're going to see much later, their navy. And again, all of this is a result of the power of mind mastering the fundamental flux of all motions that are ever and always ceaseless through techne, which is to say the arts, craftsmanship, technological innovation. Now, what's so amazing about this is that this is our first glimmer of daring that mastery over motion in the form of techne, technology, always leads to. And in particular, we see this in the Athenians. In other words, the daring of mind and its confidence of strength first shows itself as Greekness through the Athenians. In other words, this on the small scale is exactly what will later show itself in the expedition to Sicily that I mentioned previously, which ruins the Athenians. But there's still more to be said here in this paragraph because we need to understand how it is that this more comfortable and relaxed lifestyle, as a result of the mastery of motion through mind in the form of techne leads to the nudity or the nakedness of man in competition. Probably what is most helpful for us in understanding this question of the nakedness or the nudity of man in competition comes from the Parthenon phrase. And I'm going to explain why, but I want to add here that this is especially helpful for us in this text because it's none other than Pericles who's going to be the one that initiates the construction of the Parthenon phrase. And it turns out that it has everything to do with our topic of techne and nihilism, and in particular, the techne or the technology of the Athenians. In fact, it's so important that Plutarch tells us about this in the life of Pericles. And so I'll just read real quickly what Plutarch has to say about it. And I'm going to read from the Waterfield translation, but it's important to understand that it's very difficult to find good translations of Plutarch's lives. Waterfield is certainly better than the one that most people have, which is to say the Dryden edition, but there are still some problems in the Waterfield translation. And so I'll adjust his translation of the Greek here and there accordingly. And as a sidebar, I need to add that my very good friends, Ancient Philosophy and Alejandro, helped me a lot with this, and really in invaluable ways, because they're the kind of friends that nerds like me pray for. But that's for a separate discussion on friendship and Aristotle.